From Studio 1A in Tampa, Florida, comes a talk show that really feels your pain and tells you like it is. We love America and all that freedom-loving Americans want to protect. Live from coast to coast and on your radio, it's For the People with Keith Allen.
We'll help you survive this thing called life with For the People. Whatever your source of stress or strife, For the People is there.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Keith Allen and proudly welcoming you to this Tuesday's edition of our program called For the People. It's Tuesday, April the 25th, 2017, and before we talk about some of the leading news stories, I want to kind of take you back a little bit because tomorrow we're going to be raffling off something that very near and dear to me. It's a piece of history, and sometimes going back is a good thing because, you know, you have to kind of reintroduce yourself to audiences that either change because you get new listeners. You know, we appreciate new listeners all the time, but then we have the older listeners that just kind of like to hear it again. So here we go. For the People has been around for decades, longer than I've literally been a part of it, other than I first heard about For the People back in 1986 in New York City. My dad ran a radio station, more or less, WMCA in New York, and that's where I first got into radio when I was a kid, sweeping floors, making coffee, and I heard For the People, which was a consumer program back then, where my dad got Chuck from Florida, from a garage, taking consumer questions, and that's really where the program began, and what its focus was originally was a consumer-based program. So, you know, miles ahead of the competition because there was no Dave Ramsey back then. So Chuck was it, and it was an overwhelming success. Now, TalkNet wanted him and a few other networks and was offered a pretty big salary. And Chuck turned it down, and he decided to start what it was known as the People's Radio Network from a turn of the century hotel called the Telford Hotel in White Springs, Florida. Now, since my dad had a relationship with Chuck, back in 95, Chuck asked my dad to quit ABC in New York and join him as the president of the network. Well, at that time, and we're really fast-forwarding here into the 90s, I was given a call by my dad where I was hosting a talk show for Bott Radio Network, a big 50,000-watt radio station in Memphis, Tennessee, WCRV, still around, 640, reached 5 states, really incredible. We call them flamethrowers, asking if I wanted to join him in White Springs, Florida. And I'm thinking to myself, I have not heard of White Springs, Florida. Where is White Springs, Florida? And he says, oh, you got to look at a map. It's, well, look, the Lake City's a big city around there. I accepted because I wanted to work with my dad. I thought it was a great opportunity, and, you know, the pay was okay, but opportunity seemed, because Chuck was onto something. He was a pioneer. I had a 24-hour talk network, and I had aspirations to go on and do my own thing, but I took the production director position. And a job as a production director is to write, to voice, and produce commercials around the network, and that's what I did. And then I was offered a job hosting a internet talk show called Cyber Talk Radio. Long story short, Chuck was taken off the air due to a botched deal with the UAW and the Clintons sicking the IRS on him for 18 years. And I went my way back to D.C. and worked for a lot of different radio companies, hosting shows, and then made it to Tampa, Florida, and did a show for many years for Salem Radio Network. And then I called Chuck just to see how he was doing, what he was doing. I know he had a lot of health issues, a lot of problems. So I contacted Chuck and I asked him if he would consider going back on the air in some form, maybe even a podcast. And he said, well, he didn't really have the help and, he needs somebody. And he asked if I was interested. And I said, well, why not? So I said, do you have a Facebook page? And he didn't. So quickly, we put out the word with trade magazines and on Facebook that Chuck was going to return to the airways. And he did for a very short time. He started having heart problems, he had a stroke, and confined in a nursing home, and just was not able to do the show after several months of doing it. I continued on with doing the broadcast, and Chuck knowing it, and having his blessings, which was a beautiful thing. But we started gaining radio stations. I mean, that's not a bad thing. We went from a podcast on Live 365, which that was a disaster because Live 365 went kaput. We thought that was a good thing, but it got our start. There was copyright issues and things that just went askew. We weren't sure of. We paid our dues, of course. And then we had found Spreaker, which was a place that still today uploads our broadcast in a podcast version, but we're on a handful of radio stations and growing. And so we've continued the show here, we being yours truly. And we do it as skeleton crew, me, myself, and I. I don't know if you've met that crew, but we do a great job. And thank God I have some friends that consult me, and friends and some supporters around the country that are generous to give a buck or two when they can. And that's kept us on the air. And the media conglomerates, it's really tough because I'm used to receiving a very nice salary for actually hosting a darn good show, but I don't get a salary. I don't receive a salary. But there comes a price when you host a show on talk radio. You have censorship. You have managers. You have program directors. You have people telling you what you can and can't say, what to talk about, what you can't talk about. This is true freedom. And For the People has always stood for Mr. and Mrs. America, as Chuck would like to call them. It was a Chuckism. And something that I like to refer to it because I can relate to. Washington hasn't served Mr. and Mrs. America very, very well, no matter where you are. Where it's flyover country, it's New York City, it's Norwich, Connecticut, Boise, Idaho. You pick your spot on planet Earth. But the point of the matter is that politicians, once they get in, they're disconnected. They say all the right things. They make you believe, like an evangelist, that what they're saying is the gospel truth, and it just turns out it's just it lets you down. The only constant is us. We're left over, and what we do is each day we try to serve up a good dose of common sense on the radio, on your podcast, wherever you might be listening to this broadcast. And it is a conglomerate effort where you come together with us and say, we want something that we can listen to, something we can learn from, and we can depend on. And that's where you come in. Now, tomorrow, we're having an auction. The auction is a news reporter from 1992-93. It's all the papers for all those years combined in a hardback edition, the first edition of the paper when it first came out at the People's Radio Network. It's a piece of history, it really is, because it went to tens of thousands of households. And remember, this program was on 350-plus radio stations daily across the United States, 60 cable outlets. It was a pretty amazing program. So we're rebuilding this. So what I'm asking you is that if you believe in me and what I'm doing each and every day, because I pour my heart out every day. I know that some of you know this. Some of my close friends know this. But I'm asking you to buy a ticket for $25 today, because tomorrow we raffle it off. And what is the raffle for? Well, the book that you'll definitely receive if you win it. And we'll call your name out on national radio. If you just want your first name, that's it. That's all we'll say. But the $25 will help us get the word out to more stations across the country. And that's what I'm asking you to do, is to help us with our summer initiative so I can take this broadcast called For the People to more stations across the country. And I need your help. I needed to come on the air today to share with you, be very transparent about it. But this is not a cash cow. I wish it was, but it's not. But like I said, through a lot of toil, sweat, tears, you name it, We put together the broadcast because, one, I do like to do what I'm doing. I do enjoy it. I believe I'm called to do what I do, and I think that all of us have particular gifts to give. And it's a good thing. We should all contribute our talents to something that betters the world around us. And the medium of radio, the voice, I don't know what it is, but it inspires people. It makes people do things for the good, and mobilizes people for the better, but sometimes even for the worst, as we've seen with the mainstream media that seems to like to smear Donald Trump every time that they get a chance to it. And, sooner or later, if they are not stopped, we're going to get a totalitarian, government, and where it's just controlled mainly from one party. And that's what the left is trying to do. It's interesting how a lot of this stuff comes from the left coast. California. Seems like a lot of this opposition, a lot of this weird stuff comes from. We have to be careful, but we have to get the word out. And God forbid, mediums like this for the people would be canceled if they got their way. And that's why we have to make sure that the freedom of speech, our First Amendment right, where people die for this each and every day, we protect this. And that's why I'm asking you to please get involved with For the People. I really believe, folks, if we don't stop this or shut this down, look how ugly that they are. Look what the changes are being made to the social fabric of our society. The things that these people get their way, these leftist snowflakes get their way. Believe me, it will be very bad news for the future of this country. And we'll become something else, and we'll be speaking different languages, literally. Who knows what flag other than ours will be up there, but we want to protect those rights because we've had too many people sacrifice their lives that we never forget to fight for the freedoms that we have. And so that's what we fight for. That's why I'm on the air, because I believe that. I've had plenty of family members serve in the military, and my grandfather, my father, my uncles, you name it. And this is the way that I serve. So again, please do something and support, become a member For the People, or just buy that ticket that we're going to be raffling off tomorrow at forthepeopleshow.com. That's where you can find our website online on the World Wide Web at forthepeopleshow.com. That's FORTHE, thepeopleshow.com. Again, forthepeopleshow.com. Sometimes you have to slow it down. Get some older folks sometimes to slow it down, kid. I can't hear what you're saying. But if you could do that today, we'd be thrilled to help us get this word out. But again, I can't do this alone. You know, everybody has a dream in their life where they want to do something and they want to contribute, and you'd hopes that somebody would actually get behind you. Well, I'm asking you today to get behind me. And I believe paying it forward. And I've done this plenty in other people's lives where I've invested in it and I've seen fruit. And it makes a difference. And I think we're all here, honest to goodness, to help each other. And if I've helped you in some way, learn something, you look forward to it, listening to the broadcast where you've been able to have some good conversation around the water cooler, help me. And I appreciate it very, very much. I will continue doing what I'm doing. I'll be dedicated to it and promise to give you the straight news. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We don't sugarcoat it. And sometimes I give my opinion most of the time. But I don't try to be ugly about it. I try to be thoughtful about it, sensible about it. Bill O'Reilly, he went back on with a podcast last night. We're going to play some of that audio, just a brief amount of trying to explain himself after the whole Fox debacle, and what a debacle it was in 2 decades at Fox News. And some breaking news on that with another string of allegations with a fellow newscaster at the network. Some very interesting news. And this has to do with wrapping around with Newsmax as well. So it'll be interesting to see the wordage of O'Reilly and how he pretty much